Hello, everyone. We have a new interview, and today we have a great content creator, and he seems a really good thinker. His name is Nan. So, hello.
Hi, how are you today?
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am 33, and there's a dog and a cat right around me. They might make a little bit of noise. Every time I start talking to the phone, they think that I must be talking to them. But I have been living off grid for about eight or 9 years now, and have settled fallow land territory from the state of Vermont, and created my own allodium and sovereign territory here. And I pretty much just developed this off-grid foundation full time. And the content I make is about all sorts of different stuff, from cryptocurrency and politics, current events, some kind of, I don't know, all sorts of stuff. I'm very generally kind of focused, I guess.
Yeah. And what are the platforms where you are creating content?
I set up an account on Odyssey, but I had some technical difficulties with it. So right now I'm just using YouTube, and then on Telegram. So the YouTube channel is OG Foundation, and then on Telegram I also post weekly. Well, they're actually on Hive, weekly reports of everything that's going on here, and then I also use their Telegram channels as well to connect all that.
And DTube as well, yes?
Yes, I have used DTube before, but I don't really use the content creation for monetization much. I mostly just use it as a form of getting my message out. So the Odyssey and the DTube and the being active on some of the alternative platforms, I don't always have time for that, but I've done a couple uploads on DTube.
Yeah, that's great. And what's your content is all about?
I guess the general theme would be individual empowerment for sovereign individuals, and the build projects here at this foundation. So kind of alternative construction techniques, as well as alternative finance like cryptocurrency. I'm a proponent of Bitcoin Cash. And then overall, just kind of general analysis of maybe the global events and economy, and mostly stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. So recently I watched your video about I don't know, but the pandemic and all the situation in the world, and I think that a lot of people are worried about everything happening, and they consume a lot of information about that. And like, what's your advice to them in such situation?
Yeah, so in relation to the pandemic and the war, I guess it is to think for yourself and not blindly follow authority figures, as time and evidence has shown that the systems of authority are self-serving and they don't really care about the people. And so to act individually and with and autonomously is in one's best interest. So in relation to the jabs, I definitely recommend people don't take them, because they're untested and there's no liability, and there's all sorts of terrible side effects that people have reported as a result of taking them. And in relation to the war and everything, I would just say don't listen to, or don't just accept as true the propaganda narratives that are going on. And if you want to learn about it, look for independent sources, and otherwise just try not to let those things kind of infiltrate and affect one's mentality and peace, I guess.
Yeah, I think people sometimes are a little bit like worry about what's going on. What do you think about like not caring at all about this stuff and not consuming all the information, for example, like abstracts, and don't and care only about our lives? Is that true thing to do?
Well, I guess the saying "ignorance is bliss" kind of comes to mind, where it can be fine to ignore all of that, but there's also the reality that these events can affect us whether we like it or not. So in relation to the whole jab agenda, it was pretty hard for people to just ignore the agenda. So for people who are completely ignorant on the subject, they most likely went along with the mandates, and they got an injection of a mystery substance that that they only did because someone else told them. Or but in relation to the war and the economics and everything, it's you can ignore it, but my intent is to try to understand it, to try to get ahead of the trends, so that I'm not victimized by that. Essentially, kind of a little story. I have an ancestor who was a stonemason in New York, and they made a good living for themselves, and they ended up keeping their value and their faith in the currency notes of the time. And then there was basically the currency notes went bankrupt, and the debts that they had were owed in gold rather than currency. So basically overnight, they went from being wealthy to being poor and bankrupt because they didn't pay any attention to the financial realities. So so it was kind of the ignorance is bliss. It was all fine as long as that system was working. And as soon as the music stopped, they found that they didn't really have anything that they thought they had. So so I would say a lot of people are living in blissful ignorance, but it's a matter of timing, really. And if so it all depends, but I prefer to educate and be aware, and in order to prepare myself for the trends that become reality in the present.
Yeah, I know, like a saying, if you don't care about politics will care about you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The systems of power and authority intend to subjugate everyone. So if one intends to be free from that subjugation, then it requires education.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me, please, how you did like start creating content? How you come to this idea? What pushed you to do this?
I think that part of it was migrating off of other social media. So I guess I started on social media like Facebook back in when I was leaving high school, and that just became part of a way to communicate. And then over time, and with the censorship and the shadow banning, I realized that I don't want to be a part of platforms like that anymore. And so it's basically just sharing information about myself, about my perspective, about things that I'm doing. And with the intent of being able to hopefully inspire or help other people, and also kind of learn from my mistakes or from what has worked well. I've also had some censorship on YouTube, but I haven't fully migrated off of YouTube currently.
Yeah, I also prefer like to stay there unless I can.
Right. Yeah, unless I'm talking about basically they censored me when I was talking about other ideas about the jabs and the VAERS data and the side effects and all of that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of censorship around that subject, and so far the censorship hasn't really ramped up about the Russia-Ukraine war, but that would be probably the next potential subject that I might face censorship in relation to if they want to chase me off the platform for speaking my truth.
Yeah, but we will find the alternative anyway. There are a lot of alternatives.
Right. Yeah, they just shoot themselves in the foot when they censor, because everyone will just migrate to better platforms. Like currently, I'm really a big fan of Telegram, of how they don't censor, and I'm able to find all sorts of different content creators on Telegram very easily, and create announcement channels and groups and all sorts of stuff. I'm a big fan of Telegram currently.
Yeah, Telegram is awesome, and also we can like share information, even like videos. You can just share them in the channels, or you can find a lot of like-minded people. Okay, tell me please how your content creation or the topic you are talking about, how it impacted you first, and your relatives, your surrounding, and how you think it's impacting other people in all the world, all who are watching you.
I guess one of the aspects is providing an independent narrative, I suppose, which I think can be helpful for people who are mostly exposed to maybe a single narrative, or what is talked about on the mainstream media. And then I guess kind of inspiring or sharing the building techniques that I do, which are very different than most. I went to the Earthship Academy in New Mexico, which is an alternative kind of construction and design school where they build with recycled materials and tires filled with dirt a lot and ferro cement structures. So being able to see all of their creations really inspired me. So I figured that sharing my creations might inspire other people. But I think the biggest idea that I kind of communicate and represent in a way is the concept of allodium, which is the idea that one's property is their absolute property, that they don't owe, that they don't have to pay tax or fealty to some authority figure. So the land that I have settled here is not subject to the federal government and its taxes and its laws and its legislation. And that's a kind of a revolutionary idea that that really empowers people to be able to absolutely own their property and to not be subject to some hierarchy of power, which traces back to feudalism, essentially, where people used to be free, and then when feudalism spread, everyone ended up subjugated to this giant system of extortion and taxation. So the idea of allodium is basically the antithesis of feudalism, is that free people can absolutely own their property and live freely upon the land. So I'm the only person I'm aware of that's doing that in the sort of the wider territory of the United States. I'm sure there are other people doing it, but I feel like that's probably the biggest revolutionary idea that I kind of propagate with the intent of empowering people and people being individual sovereigns. Because ultimately, without responsible individuals and individual sovereignty, then you get mob rule, essentially.
Yeah. Is it possible to implement that in other countries or only on US?
No, anywhere. It's basically just natural law. Every individual has the natural right to create their own shelter upon the land. The big fiction that most people have bought into is that these central banks and nation state governments, that they own all the land of the earth, and everyone else are basically serfs or renters who have to pay taxes for the land that they think that they own, but in reality they are just renting rights to the land from a system of authority. So all of the natural creatures in the world, they don't pay a tax to create their home. It's only humans who have bought into this fiction that we have to bow down, and the whole idea that the only two things guaranteed in life are death and taxes. Well, it's a complete lie, and you don't have to pay taxes if you choose to be free.
Yeah. I wish more people would understand such things.
I think that, yeah, that's part of my that's part of the reason why I make why I share everything that I'm doing, because in a way it could be safer for me to not be in the public view, but from my perspective it's more impactful and better overall for me to I guess kind of exemplify the idea and demonstrate how it can be effective. So because in a lot of people's minds it's just an impossibility, so to show them the reality of it, it opens their mind to see that it's a possibility.
Yeah. So maybe the last question I would ask is about religion, because I think I see that a lot of things in what's created now, it's somehow related with the religion. So what do you think about this?
I would say in general, religions are kind of mechanisms of control, of being able to herd people in common mentalities and methods of control. They can be positive in the sense that they can inculcate morality and virtue, but they can also be very negative in the sense that they can subjugate the mass of people and herd them towards violent ends, or just take away their freedom from birth, essentially. So I think there's a lot of positive things to point to in relation to religions, but there's also a lot of negative things to point to. So in general, like if the general idea of religion is to have people align closer with the kind of divinity or God or Christ, and so some religions put themselves as the intermediary, as if you have to go through them in order to reach the goal. And then there's other religions that are more like a signpost that kind of just point you in the right direction. So in general, I think that it's very important for people to cultivate their virtue, their morality, their ideals. And when religion helps people to do that, then it can be positive. But when religion kind of gets in the way, or it's trying to kind of manipulate people towards the goals of that religious institution, as opposed to helping the people align with their highest potential, then it's not necessarily that beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. I usually think that, for example, when it comes to religions, I think that like there is a God, or I don't know, maybe God, maybe gods, who or someone or some creature who created this world, and we have to just to, like, I don't know, if we are in a very bad situation, maybe we have to ask them to help us. We have just to believe in that. But who is exactly that God? Who are those gods? It's like unknown. I don't know, like simple people, they can't be sure like exactly 100% about who is God, like I don't know, the Christ or the Buddha or Allah or any others. I don't know. I have such idea in my mind. What do you think about it?
Well, I would define God as basically everything all in one, so the unity of everything, and I would define Christ as basically the potential of each individual to embrace that reality. So if the ego and the sense of individual experience and separation from everything is in a way that which separates us from everything. So to be in alignment with, and also I would say that that nature is, it all works in harmony, and in that way it is alive. So you could say that the God is well, I guess I would say that God is everything and Christ is everything that's alive, essentially. So by it's a bit, and also it gets to kind of the failures of language to even to use one word to represent everything, to call it God, or one word or another. Is kind of limiting. So it's kind of reveals the failures of language to talk about the subject. But I would say that whenever there's worshiping a person or a single idea or a single idol or thing, that's not God. That's a separation from everything. And so to be in alignment with God, I would say is realizing the Christhood with realizing Christ, or the Christhood within each individual, so that potential exists within everyone by kind of overcoming one's own traumas and conflicts that have come up in the world, and healing oneself and aligning with that the living God, or which would be Christ. Then basically that consciousness or that energy becomes that the separation between what one would associate as oneself kind of dissolves in the face of that greater consciousness, I guess. So I don't know how clear I've been in saying that, but I would say that I guess hopefully that provides a little perspective on my kind of definition of God and Christ. And so when I think about the subject, I think that, or my relation to the subject, I guess, would be to be conscious of everything as much as possible. So the more aware and more conscious we are, it's like the more godly we are, because the more of everything that which is seemingly external is also consciously internalized, I guess. And we can discover that potential by meditating and by going internally. And then the exhibition of that in our state of being to align closer with that Christ mentality is to exemplify that in our life and in our action, and then to also help to I guess lead by example for all other individuals to see that potential exists within them as well, to transcend their own limitations and embrace more of everything. And ultimately God is so great that we can't the journey of realizing that is a lifelong journey, and there's no end to it, because only when we die do we really leave our individual self. We have the opportunity in our lives to experience, and then to also to choose, to have the free will to do what we think is best with our lives, and then the fruits of those choices are how we are known.
Yeah, yeah. I also like think that this like big world, like if we take like I don't know the earth, I don't know the world that's in the ocean, the people themselves, their organs that they have, the cells that we have, like in every cell we have like a word. So that's could it created by coincidence or something like that. That could be created or only by like you said, great consciousness, something like that, something really big. We can't understand, we can't imagine what is it. It's really great.
Yeah, I think there's a Buddhist saying that the universe exists within every atom, and it also kind of gives perspective why kind of more of the Eastern religions are more internalized, whereas the Western ones are more externalized. But the reality that the whole universe is accessible within us by going internally, and I think that's what that's how I use the word Christ, basically. So a Christed individual would be one who is able to internally access the universal kind of energy that is God, essentially. So it's not overcoming the obstacles that separate us from everything that is, so that with that perspective we can make the best possible choices in the time that we have in this life. So from my perspective, the most valuable thing that I can do with my time is to exemplify how people can be completely free and responsible and empowered and not subjugated to some other system, but exemplify the best kind of potential of humanity, I guess.
That's great.
And everyone can do that. It's not that there's one right answer, but if everyone does that, then what we end up with is a diversity of expression. And when everyone is expressing themselves in their kind of their highest expression, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, tell me please the end thing, the last thing, why people should follow you, subscribe on your channels, and consume your content.
I will, if you want to follow me, I'll share information about basically subjects that are empowering. So when it comes to cryptocurrency, I talk a lot about finance, about disintermediating your value from these systems of authority, so that you can directly spend, to see different ideas about construction and ways of living, to see my alternative narratives about everything that's going on in the world, and in general to I guess kind of prepare for what's coming, so that we can thrive as much as possible. And a lot of the time, so the opposite of the ignorance is bliss is kind of like to explore uncomfortable truths, so that that trauma or that conflict no longer exists within us, so that we can face some of these things that are kind of awful, and then not have that conflict with us, so we can see what's going on with the jab agenda, but not be subject to that, or see what's going on in the warfare and figure out how to not be affected by that. Or so I would say that just in general, hopefully the result of following my content is inspiration and empowerment.
Yeah, that's great. And I liked also your content because it's kind of not pushing for the one side or another, but more closer to reality, like closer to the reason.
Right. I would say that pushing for the people to not choose sides, but to choose themselves and their local family and community, and to extricate themselves from the subjugation, which is usually where you see these sides. It's all divide and conquer. So it's a hierarchy of power which is trying to control you, and then they divide into these different sides, whether it's political parties or warring countries or so many different ways that these ideas are presented as if there's only two choices. In general, I think that all relations ought to be symbiotic, and like in the free market, all transactions are symbiotic, because both people who are transacting are both benefiting from that. And I think that the idea of politics can be symbiotic too, but we don't really have examples of that. And so just trying to overcome the limitations that we've accepted largely through our upbringing, and see ways that are better. Leaves the potential that our future will be better than our past.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope more people will be reasonable, like you, and more people will follow you and follow the reasonable people. And I hope, of course, for a better world for all of us.
I think that the fact that we have these communication channels and the internet and the ability the ability to freely share ideas. So long as that is thriving, then I think it's almost a given that we're going to end up in a better future, because we're all learning from each other. But when things get censored, and there's not that free speech, and there's not that free exchange of commerce, and when there's not freedom, then things seem to go downhill. And when there is freedom, there can be bad outcomes sometimes, but overall people learn from those, and then overall conditions get better over time. So so I think it's very important for us as content creators to be able to do that and speak our truth, and then and just rest on our merits, I guess.
Yeah, we have like this mission together in doing so in helping people to think in the right direction. Just like developers are creating for us the environment where we have freedom of speech and no censorship, because those developers are doing also their part.
Right. Yeah, it's a very important role. So there's developers of platforms. There's people who are promoting different currency solutions. I'm kind of promoting primarily a different kind of whole way of kind of interrelating with or the lack of interrelating with the state in a way. And there's people who express that through art and in all sorts of different ways. And that's really the beauty of when you have really a thriving culture where people are embracing their natural creativity. You see all these different expressions, and they're all necessary. Like in the whole lockdowns, they had this idea of essential workers, as if some people are essential and other people aren't essential, but really everyone is essential in their own calling, essentially, whether someone might really like to make food or to raise children or to do whatever. That every calling is inherently valuable and important. So yeah, so I don't know, that's ultimately kind of what I think is most important. What I strive for most is just that people need to be free. As long as there's freedom, that we have all of the beauty that naturally arises from people's creative expressions. And when there's not that freedom, then that's stifled. And so it needs to be on the content creation and the currency and in the way that we are sovereign of ourselves and on the land as well. So, and it's all important, and that's kind of the ideal that I strive for, is that we'll have a community start, and it all has to start locally. So you start with yourself, and then your family, and then your community. But ideally, it can be the whole world that coexists in a symbiotic way as we overcome the various forces that are parasitical and not providing a real service, but are just extracting value from everybody else.
That's it. I think there are a lot of things we did discuss. It's really great. I hope more people will find this information. I hope more people will follow you. I'm really thankful for your interview and your responses. And I hope in the future maybe something change and we will collaborate more.
Certainly, I'd be happy to talk again. And yeah, one day at a time, we can make it a little better.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll meet in real life.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Currently, I'm not. I haven't traveled much recently because they've kind of restricted the freedom of travel. But
yeah.
I'm providing a space that is welcoming to other people, and then I hope that in time I will be more mobile to be able to travel to other places as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.